Hello there, shortcuts. This is video 2 for June 5th, Wednesday evening. The price list will go out 9 p.m. Sydney time. If you would like to be on the list, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. This is the jazz, soul, funk, and blues list. I just published the classic rock, Aussie, and pop list. So, let's crack into it. Now, I'll start this thing. I have a question for those of you who hang around to the last record on the list. Here's a question for you. See if you can get it right. Which producer, singer, songwriter, an all-round classic soundtrack guy was paralyzed when he was introduced on stage in 1990. There, absolute legendary soul singer, songwriter, and producer that had a horrific accident and was paralyzed from the neck down when a lighting rig fell on him as he was introduced in a concert in the US in 1990. Have your guesses, and there's a record by this artist. It's the last one on the list. I am going to start here, though. We got some jazz to start off today, and I'm going to start with this. Total Eclipse by Bobby Hutcherson. Now, Bobby Hutcherson, there's the back sleeve, was a vibraphone and marimba player. And what's special about this record, and the guys from Shibuya have sent me a series of notes on it, it is a promo copy that says not for resale. I've been assured that this record has never been played. So there you go. It is, I think it's an late 70s repress. It is absolutely pristine. Other than this little sticker here, which is also part of the promo status of this record. So why am I kicking off with this? Well, Bobby Hutcherson was quite a serious jazz dude all the way kind of through the 60s. This record is late 60s, 1968. Now, on this record, he plays with Harold Land, who plays tenor sax and also some flute on the record, and Joe Chambers on drums. But most importantly, to my ears, Chick Corea on piano. And this lends this record a very 60s feel. You're listening to this and it really does sound like an end of the 60s summary. It's very interesting. Up until this point, Bobby Hutcherson had appeared on a load of records. His name's a bunch of things. But he's quite a serious guy. But look at this cover. Look, this is the era where being a kind of furrowed brow, serious kind of jazz person just didn't really work. And look at this, kind of quirky. Albeit this whole scene here of him smoking the cigarette, later reissues of this replace the cigarette digitally with various things that he holds in his hand. The most interesting being a melting mint ice cream. That's so odd. But what do you get with this record, though? I've got a couple of Bobby Hutcherson records. With this one in particular, you get a very playful and kind of almost soundtrack feel. The piano, Chick Corea, is a really nice counterbalance to the vibes. But he doesn't hog Bobby Hutcherson. He's egalitarian, and so therefore this feels it is a good time record. And I've been reading some other people's opinions on it, um, because the folks from Shibuya just sent a rave review just saying they absolutely love it. And it has its fans. At the time, it had a couple of mixed reviews, but over the years, it's become recognized as the record that started to bridge the idea of jazz and fusion. And I'm quite conflicted about the kind of jazz fusion era. To me, it hasn't aged anywhere near as well as the kind of hard bop records, and particularly for my ears, the records from kind of 61 to kind of 63, 64, and there's one of those coming next. But this is a little bit later in the 60s, and the sound quality is astonishing. Man, it is so well recorded. And really Van Gelder, just ridiculous. And anyway, it's a really interesting record. I just streamed it because I didn't want to play this, because if it's never been played, I'd like whoever buys it to be the first to play it. But yeah, a very, very cool thing. I've got 3 jazz records to start with. This could, I think, easily be a kick-off record, but for now, it's second place. This is That's Where It's At by Stanley Turrentine. Now, this record, Stanley Turrentine with Les McCann on piano and Otis Finch on drums. Again, beautiful condition. You would not know that this wasn't new. I promise you, it is absolutely pristine. Dudley Williams does the notes, and this is from 62, although I believe it was recorded in 61. Now here you get, on Total Eclipse, this kind of, we're just getting toward the jazz fusion era. This record is steeped in jazz soul. And that's not a surprise. With Stanley Turrentine came up through soul gospel tradition. From what I understand, I'm reading a biography of him. He didn't really play jazz until reasonably later in life. Albeit here he's late 20s, and he's starting to form his own identity as one of the premier tenor sax players on the planet. You often hear the phrase hard blowing attached to Stanley Turrentine. He's a loud player, unlike maybe my personal favorite, who's Ike Quebec. But on this record really works. But soul jazz. So if you listen to the second track on this record, which is called Soft Pedal Blues, that'll give you more of a insight as to what this is. And I do think that Les McCann almost steals the show from Stanley Turrentine on this record. He is amazing. He writes quite a lot of the songs. Yeah, I know that there's at least one big Les McCann fan out there, and Tim, I'm talking about you. But this one is, I didn't really think of Stanley Turrentine, Les McCann. It just hasn't been something I've really thought about or come across. But Soft Pedal Blues, the little notes are interesting. This Turrentine original opens with Stanley speaking the blues. That's the first sentence, and yeah, it's really cool. The McCann image is left intact. A tender solo ensues as Les briefly plays before Stanley continues the tenor mood. I love that. It's really, really, really cool record. Beautiful condition. It is the Blue Note 4000 series by the Japanese Blue Note subsidiary, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm not sure which is the best between those first two. They're both pretty awesome. Which relegates this to third place, but on any day this could be number one as well. So we've had 68, and we've had 62, now we get 56. Detroit, New York Junction by Thad Jones. We've had the vibes with Bobby Hutcherson. We've got the tenor sax with Stanley Turrentine. And now we've got the amazing Thad Jones on trumpet. Thad Jones, the magnificent Thad Jones, is probably my favorite trumpet jazz record, and it's the successor to this. This is his first record on Blue Note. Listen to this though. Thad Jones on trumpet, Billy Mitchell on tenor sax, Kenny Burrell on guitar, Oscar Pettiford on bass, Shadow Wilson on drums. And there's some piano in here, courtesy of Tommy Flanagan as well. Leonard Feather, my favorite, writes the notes. Anything in these kind of late 50s is all Leonard Feather. First paragraph. Ever since it lost its amateur standing as a rural folk music and began to earn attention as an aesthetic American art form in the view of the literati, jazz has been undergoing a process that might well be described as citification. Here, Detroit, New York. This is a wonderful opening paragraph. I think it's a really, really cool record. Now, it's quite different to the first two in that it is a proper hard bop record. So you get dual instruments dueling with each other, leading, very propulsive. Even the song titles, Scratch, Tariff, Blue Room, they kind of give you an idea of the strength. Whilst it may not be quite as magnificent as the magnificent Thad Jones, forgive the pun, it's still really lovely, and I really rate it. Great record. All right, let's talk Shortcuts royalty. The Meters. You've all heard me raving about the Meters. Love them to bits. This is an interesting one. This is Fire on the Bayou, their third record as a group, and it is still sealed. Best I can tell, this is from the late 90s. I'm pretty sure it's either 97 or 99. Still sealed, Rhino Records. Read the reviews. Of course it's sealed. I don't want to open this. Whoever buys this wants to open it. The reviews say it is a fantastic press. A lot of those late 90s presses that, particularly in the US, that the late 90s vinyl represses were made really well, because obviously it was very niche sales at that time, and so it wasn't something that you would really only do it if you really, really wanted to, and they really wanted to get this out on vinyl. It's a brilliant album. The title track could well be the Meters' greatest. It's certainly their heaviest bass record. The bass playing on this record is ridiculous. Another Shortcuts legend, Alan Toussaint, was the producer. It's just brilliant. Still sealed. Whoever buys this is in for a treat. So that's really cool. And a brilliant album. And so's this. Now this is a Jamaican press of Burning Spear Live. Now, Burning Spear, I'm going to forget his name now, Rodney Donington, I think he was, released some of the greatest roots reggae records of all time. There's the Jamaican label. It's in really nice condition, which is pretty unusual for Jamaican presses. It's really nice. It's obviously been well looked after. Two classic roots reggae records preceded this live album. One, the incomparable in my ears, Marcus Garvey, and the second, Man on the Hill. Now, this live record was recorded in front of couple of thousand people. It actually tells you that it was recorded in front of a few thousand people in London, and it is right after those two classic records were released. So the track listing has a mixture of those two records: Marcus Garvey, Slavery Days from Marcus Garvey, Black Soul, Lion, Man in the Hills on side two, and then The Outlier, which is this amazing closing version of Throw Down Your Arms, which was then a key song on his next record. Look at that sleeve, one of the great live sleeves. There are not that many great live reggae records, in my opinion, but this is one of them. Brilliant, brilliant guy, great band. The band that he recruited at this time was pretty much all of Aswad, who were the premier band, reggae band in the UK at the time. Really, really cool. Oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? Okay, now we have an album I love, and this is sealed as well. This is the Jimmy Castor Bunch. The album is called It's Just Begun, and this is the Record Store Day repress on red vinyl from, I think it's 20, let me see, does it say? Maybe 2019, 2020. The Jimmy Castor Bunch, an amazing funk soul group from the early 70s. Think Funkadelic or Parliament. That's the kind of genre we're talking about here. But with a really scuzzy guitar. Kind of, you do hear people talking about Jimi Hendrix when they're listening to the Jimmy Castor Bunch, and there are some definitely Hendrixian solos, but it's more scuzzy than that. It's and often on the bass as well. They've got this kind of garage noise effect, and it's great, but also kind of funny on occasions. There was a crossover hit. There's the back sleeve on this record called Troglodyte, which is pretty funny, and it really does feature the heavy scuzz bass, but it's really great, and that's still sealed as well. Now I've got two of my favorite soul singers from the 70s: Danger High Voltage, Betty Wright, and the handwriting on the wall, Ann Peebles. Ann Peebles is my favorite soul. Oh, Mini Jack. No, it's just still. I think it's still Ann Peebles. This is late 70s. Ann Peebles, a little bit more soul and funk, but really, really cool. Big fan of this. Now, this record, Danger High Voltage, Betty Wright, had some classic crossover tracks too. Where's the Love that opens side 2? I'm pretty sure this won her a Grammy for, track of the year. It's that good. Yeah, really, really cool. Of course, both with the Obi. Now, if you're raving about the soul singers of the 70s, really probably the greatest soul singer of the 60s is Sam Cooke. And this is his best album, in my opinion. This is the Japanese repress of Night Beat, Sam Cooke, 1962. If he hadn't died so young, I suspect he would be up there with Marvin and the others, but wasn't to be. And I think this is his greatest statement. Now, this is a repress that the Japanese did on the RCA Dynagroove vinyl. I think this is kind of in the 70s. You can see the blurb here. Sounds amazing. This is the exact copy I have on my shelf. Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen, Mean Old World, Little Red Rooster, You Gotta Move, Shake, Rattle and Roll. It's an all-time soul classic. Amazing album, Night Beat, Sam Cooke. All right, just a few to go. The Ohio Players. This is a P-Vine special, Japan-only release, which is a compilation of the best of the early Ohio Players. This is kind of 60s to early 70s Ohio Players. Really cool kind of funk compilation. All right, coming to the end. 6 Silver String, BB King, also with an Obi. This is kind of some of the later period. This was, in fact, his 50th album. Caused a bit of a stir when it came out. I remember buying it on CD. Very, very nice to have it on vinyl, and really lovely copy too. All right, so those of you who were debating the question, which, excuse me, which producer, soul singer, arranger, I'm losing my voice, all-round legend was paralyzed when a lighting rig fell on his head in 1990. And it was, of course, Curtis Mayfield. Now, this is a US repress of his Honesty record. As Curtis Mayfield kind of moved into the early 80s, it was less about funk and more about soul. And these records became these incredibly produced soul records where you've got dramatic strings with this incredible falsetto voice. Whilst they're not as lauded as his 70s output, they're still really, really, really good, and well worth kind of having a listen, especially if you're a fan. Yeah. And he didn't die until about 10 years later. He had some complications, but such a tragic thing to happen to such a legendary figure. There you have it. List 2 for this week. If any of those records tickle your fancy, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com, and I'll put you on the mailing list. And thank you for watching. Over and out.